Obviously, much of the discussion of the border crisis revolved around what to do actually with the border itself.
Right.
Fair to say now every city in America is a border city, including here in Chicago, which brings us to our next question from Colin. He's a financial analyst here in Chicago. A lifelong resident?
Yes, sir.
Lifelong resident. Go ahead.
Welcome to Chicago, Mr. Vice President.
Thanks, Colin.
Chicago is currently experiencing a massive influx of illegal migrants, leading to proposed tent cities and causing a devastating strain on our city's resources and budget. What is your plan to reduce illegal immigration at the southern border?
Colin, we have the worst crisis at our southern border in American history. And it's a man-made crisis. That man's name is Joe Biden. Under our administration, we had reduced illegal immigration and asylum abuse by 90% by the time we left office. Joe Biden came into office, and on day one, he shut down construction of the border wall. We'd built hundreds of miles of wall. You can go down there today, and you'll see what looks like parked railroad trains of girders rusting in the sunshine with large gaps in the wall. Border Patrol agents will tell you the cartels are in operational control of our border today. Then he's been working to undo what was called the Remain in Mexico policy that I negotiated on behalf of the administration with the Mexicans. It said, if you're going to apply for asylum, as millions of the people that have now been dispersed through our country are doing, that we'd ask you to wait in Mexico while we schedule your hearing to consider your application. That, combined with Title 42 that allowed us to return illegal immigrants back across the border, literally ended illegal immigration and asylum abuse. Joe Biden undid all of that and sent a signal south of the border that our borders are open and that an avalanche of humanity, the largest example of human trafficking in human history, is taking place. The cartels charge about $5,000 American to haul people up, often abusing people on the way, particularly, I say, the heavy heart, young women and the elderly. And arrive at the border and shove them across. But under this administration, the situation's only going to get worse. I mean, I actually heard the current Vice President, Kamala Harris, say that they'd improve the situation, but it gets worse and gets better like the weather. No, it's not like the weather. We can control our southern border. A nation without borders is not a nation. We prove that you can control the southern border. So I will tell you that day one of any administration that I lead, we'll restart construction of the wall. We'll put Remain in Mexico back into effect, Title 42 back into effect, and we will expedite the asylum applications of these millions of people, hundreds of thousands of which have been sent to Chicago, to New York, to major cities around the country, and we'll process those people. Now, where people literally have a legitimate claim for asylum, we have laws that consider that. But other people, if it's denied, they go home. And but this is an extraordinary crisis, and the American people deserve to know it is 100% at the feet of Joe Biden. It's one more reason why we need new leadership in the White House.
Colin, you talked a lot about, and you asked about the southern border, but you talked a lot about what was happening in Chicago here. Where in Chicago do you live? Describe to us what it's like for you, how it's changed.
Sure. Well, I live on the north side, and you could just walk down the street. People living in doorways, putting up tents in public parks, massive tents. And now our mayor is proposing tent cities because there's just so many here now.
Hard to imagine how tent cities would work out in the winter in Chicago, but
weatherized.
Yeah. So, Mr. Vice President, you've talked about closing the southern border. You've got sanctuary mayors, sanctuary states around the country now where what's happening in Chicago is being replicated. How, on a federal level, do you deal with the situation that has now been created in these cities?
Well, you defund sanctuary cities, first and foremost.
What does that mean, though? Well,
that means you say to cities like New York and like Chicago and other cities that at least said they were sanctuary cities, and still they were turned into sanctuaries, right? I mean, I don't know what the new mayor of Chicago is saying about it, but I actually commended Mayor Eric Adams in New York because he finally was calling out the Biden administration and saying, this is a threat to our city, it's a threat to the safety in our city, it's a threat to our economy. And then when I praised him for it at a press conference, he blamed the Trump administration. Again, we had secured the southern border. This whole crisis began when Joe Biden literally undid every policy that we put into effect. But look, I think you use the power of the purse, federal government, and say that we're going to defund sanctuary cities around the country until they dismantle the sanctuary city criteria, and so that they're not magnets for attracting illegal immigration into the country. And then at the end of the day, as I said, you need to expedite the process of these people that are brought in to the country. But I also want to say one other thing, and that is that, look, we have a broken immigration system in this country, all right? We have a broken border, but we also have a broken immigration system. And when my grandfather came to this country in 1923, he stepped off a boat onto Ellis Island. Richard Michael Cawley came here to work, and he came here to be an American. And that was how Michael Richard Pence got his name and got to be Vice President of the United States. Our families live that American dream, but that dream doesn't work for people anymore. Now we have this incoherent system of chain migration that's largely based on families. If I'm President of the United States, Leland, I'm going to go to the American people, I'm going to go to the Congress and say we need a merit-based immigration system in this country that literally says, what are the needs in the economy here in Illinois? What are the needs of the economy in Indiana, in Iowa, everywhere around America? And then open the doors of our country to people to come in legally that want to come here and work in those professions, in the city and on the farm that we need them to work. That's what a merit-based immigration system is. And frankly, it's what it was. When my grandfather came here, he had to get a credential in a certain profession because there was a quota for people in certain professions to be admitted through Ellis Island. We got to get back to that idea and start putting the interest of America first, but have an immigration system that works for a growing American economy.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.